The price of survival. The market was loud, full of voices, but Leora heard none of it. The air smelled of smoke and metal, the red sky above the city pressing down like a heavy blanket. Her father walked beside her, his face hard, his steps quick. He didn't look at her. He hadn't spoken much since morning. They passed stalls full of strange goods, shining weapons, dried alien fruit, cages with animals that hissed. But they were not here to buy. They were here because the family owed a debt too big to pay. Her father's hands shook as he held the small bag of coins. It was all they had left, and it was not enough. The warlord's collectors had come 2 days ago. They had given a choice: pay in full or lose everything. And everything included their lives. Leora had thought her father would find a way. He always did, but this time was different. This time, when the collectors left, he just sat in silence, staring at the ground. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "There is another way," he had said. Now, as they reached the center of the market, Leora saw who they had come to meet. A tall alien trader stood waiting near a black transport. His skin was pale and almost silver, his eyes like cold glass. Behind him were 2 guards, armed and ready. Her father stopped. "This is my daughter," he said, his voice shaking just a little. The trader looked at Leora like she was a thing to be weighed and priced. "How old?" the trader asked. 17 cycles, her father answered. "She is strong. She can work. She will obey." Leora felt her stomach twist. She had heard the stories. Daughters sold to rich households, to mines, to distant colonies. Some were never seen again. "Father?" she whispered, but he did not look at her. The trader opened a small device and tapped something. "A contract," he said. "She will be sent to a safe place, married to a human on a far world." The words "safe" and "married" felt strange and heavy in Leora's ears. She wanted to run, but where? The guards would catch her before she reached the end of the street. And if she refused? The warlord's men would kill her family before sunset. Her father signed the contract. Leora felt her chest tighten as the trader held out a small tablet for her mark. She hesitated, but the trader's cold eyes told her this was not really a choice. Her hand shook as she pressed her finger to the screen. The trader closed the device. "It is done," he said. One of the guards stepped forward, taking Leora's arm. Her father still didn't meet her eyes, at last, as she was pulled toward the transport. He said softly, "Forgive me." The words hurt more than the grip on her arm. The door of the transport closed with a heavy sound. Inside, the air was cooler, but it felt no easier to breathe. Through a small window, she saw the market fade into the distance. The streets she had known all her life disappeared. The shipyard rose ahead, metal towers shining in the red light. Her transport slid into the shadow of something much larger, a human ship. It was different from the sleek, curved designs of her people's craft. This ship was sharp-edged, solid, like it had been built to fight. The sight made her shiver. When the door opened, she was led into a long corridor. Other alien women were there, some with skin like hers, others from worlds she didn't know. All had the same look in there. Eyes, fear. A human officer in dark uniform walked past them. His eyes were unreadable. "You will be treated with respect," he said, his voice flat but not cruel. "You will meet your husband when we arrive." Leora said nothing. She didn't trust his words. Respect meant nothing if she was still a prize in someone else's hands. That night, as the ship hummed through space, Leora lay on a small bed in a narrow room. She couldn't sleep. Every sound made her tense. The deep thrum of engines, the faint click of footsteps outside. Once, she thought she heard a whisper in a language she didn't know. When she looked into the hallway, it was empty. She sat back on the bed, holding her knees. She thought about her father's face, about the way he hadn't looked at her until the last moment. Was she angry? Yes. Did she understand why he did it? She didn't know, but she knew one thing. Her life was no longer hers. The next morning, she stood at the small window of the passenger room. Ahead, far in the distance, a blue-green world floated in the black. It was beautiful. But Leora could not feel hope yet. For all she knew, it would be the last place she ever saw. The ship moved through the black of space like a silent shadow. From her narrow bunk, Leora could feel the deep heartbeat of its engines. Every vibration reminded her that she was far from home and getting farther with each passing moment. The corridors were wide but cold, made of gray metal with strange glowing lines along the walls. Everything smelled faintly of oil and something sharper, something she didn't know. The human crew walked with quiet steps, speaking little. They did not stare at her, but they also did not smile. The other brides kept to themselves. Some sat on their beds for hours, their eyes empty. One alien woman, with bright green skin and silver hair, whispered to Leora in a soft voice. "They say humans are kind," she said, "but they also say kindness can be a trap." Before Leora could ask what she meant, the woman turned away. Days passed, though it was hard to tell time and space. The lights in the corridors dimmed for night and brightened for day, but the stars outside never changed. Leora learned to walk the ship's lower halls, keeping close to shadows. She didn't know why. Maybe she wanted to learn the paths in case she ever had to run. One night, while walking, she heard something strange, a soft scratching sound, like claws on metal, coming from an unused storage bay. The door was half open. She stepped closer, her heart beating faster. Inside, the light flickered, revealing nothing but stacked crates. Still, she could swear she saw a shadow slip between them when she stepped forward. The door shut with a sharp click. Leora backed away quickly, unsure if it was her imagination or something real. Later, at mealtime, she saw the human officer again, the same one who had spoken on the first day. This time, he sat at the far end of the dining hall, reading from a glowing tablet. When his eyes lifted and met hers, there was something there, a flicker. Like he wanted to say something but chose not to. It made her uneasy. The journey was not without incident. One cycle, a loud alarm shattered the usual silence. The brides were ordered to stay in their rooms. Through the thin door, Leora heard the pounding of boots and quick, sharp voices in English. She could not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Urgent, dangerous. When the alarm finally stopped, the air in the corridor smelled faintly of smoke. No one explained what had happened. A week later, or maybe more, the ship began to slow. The stars shifted outside her window, and she saw the planet again. Closer now, it was beautiful, covered in oceans and clouds, but something in her chest tightened. She was about to meet the human who owned her. Would he be worse than the warlords? Or something else entirely? The night before arrival, Leora could not sleep. She walked the corridors again, this time more carefully in the dim light. She passed a window looking out into space. For just a moment, she thought she saw another ship following them, far away but moving at the same speed. She blinked, and it was gone. Still, she felt certain they were not alone. In the morning, the human officer came for her. "It's time," he said simply. Her hands felt cold. The walk to the meeting hall seemed endless, every step heavy. When the doors opened, light flooded in, and for the first time she saw him. Captain Elias, tall, calm, and nothing like she expected. He did not wear jewels or carry weapons. Instead, he stood with his hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. "Leora," he said, as if testing her name. "I didn't buy you to keep you. I bought you to save you." She stared at him, not believing a word. Somewhere deep inside the ship, she thought she heard the faint scratching sound again, and in that moment, she knew her journey was far from over. First meeting, the meeting hall was nothing like Leora expected. It was bright, clean, and quiet. No guards stood at the doors, no chains waited for her hands. Only one man was there, standing near the far wall, Captain Elias. He was tall, his uniform plain, his dark hair tied back. His eyes were steady, but there was something in them, not cruelty, but something harder to read. He didn't look at her the way the traitor had. He didn't look like he wanted to own her. That made her even more unsure. "You are Leora," he said, his voice calm. "I am Elias, captain of this vessel." She didn't answer. Her people had a saying. The first words can be a trap. Elias glanced toward the door, as if checking for someone. "I didn't want this," he said. "I didn't want to buy anyone." His voice was steady, but his hand tapped lightly against his leg. A small, quick rhythm. It was the only sign he might be nervous. Before she could reply, a sound cut through the hall. A faint metallic clang from somewhere above. Elias's head turned sharply toward the ceiling. His calm face tightened for the first time. A young human officer rushed in, his voice low but urgent. "Captain, we have movement on the lower decks." Elias's eyes flicked to Leora, then back to the officer. "Keep her here," he ordered. Before striding out of the room, the door shut behind him. The hall felt larger now, emptier. Leora's eyes moved to the corners. No camera she could see, but the air felt watched. Minutes passed then, from the far side of the hall. She heard it again, that same soft scratching she'd heard days ago in the storage bay. This time it was closer. She turned slowly toward the sound. In the shadow under one of the wall panels, something shifted. Not a rat, not human. The shape was wrong. The panel made a slow creak, then it stopped. Silence. The door opened again, and Elias returned, his face calm as if nothing had happened. But there was a faint smear of something dark on his sleeve. Not dirt, not oil blood. He didn't explain. Instead, he looked at her and said, "You're safe here." For now, it wasn't the kind of promise that made her feel safe. Somewhere deep inside her, Leora began to think that maybe this human was not lying. Maybe he had bought her to protect her. But the question was, from what? Leora's new home on Earth was nothing like the crowded market streets she had left. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The air was clean, the walls smooth and white. From her window, she could see trees, tall and green, moving in the wind. They looked peaceful. But she could not forget the scratching sounds from the ship. Elias gave her a room of her own. The bed was soft, the blanket warm. He told her she could walk anywhere inside the house, but whenever she asked about the world outside, his answer was the same, not yet. During the day he was distant. Sometimes he worked in another room for hours, speaking in low tones through a small communicator. Other times he left the house entirely, returning only after dark. When he came back, there was always something different about him. A cut on his cheek, a rip in his jacket, a new look in his eyes. But he never told her where he had been. Leora watched, listened, waited. The humans she saw on screen seemed open, loud, always laughing. Elias was not like that. He was careful, guarded, like a soldier who never put down his weapon. Even when smiling, one night, when the wind outside was loud and the house was dark, she heard the front door open. Soft footsteps crossed the hall, then a thud, heavy, dull. She stepped into the hallway and saw him leaning against the wall, his hand pressed to his side. The dark smear on his shirt was fresh blood. Before she could speak, he straightened. "Go back to your room," he said, his voice firm. "But..." She didn't move. "What is chasing you?" she asked. For a moment, his eyes softened, but then the walls came back. "It's not important," he said, turning away. That night, Leora couldn't sleep. The sound came again, the same slow scratching she'd heard on the ship, only now it was inside the house. She followed it down the hall, past the kitchen, to the storage room at the back. The door was slightly open. She pushed it wider and froze. Something was there, crouched in the dark, its body low, its eyes reflecting faint light like glass. It was not human, it was not from her world, and before she could scream, it slipped out the back door into the night. Silent as smoke in the morning, Elias acted like nothing had happened, but she noticed he had locked the storage room. He gave her breakfast, asked if she slept well. She didn't answer. She was beginning to understand something. The warlord might not be the only one hunting her. It began without warning. One moment, Leora was in the kitchen, the smell of warm bread in the air. The next, the ground shook. A deep, rolling thunder came from above. Rattling the glasses in the cupboard, she ran to the window, the sky over. The trees had split open. A dark shape blocked the sun, huge and jagged. Not a cloud. A ship, not human. A voice burst from the small device on the wall, sharp and urgent. Elias! They're here! She didn't need to ask who they were. Elias appeared from the hallway, already pulling on a dark jacket. His face was set, his eyes hard. Stay in the house, he told her. But she could see the faint tremor in his hand, not from fear, but from the need to move fast. Outside, the air filled with a low hum. Shapes dropped from the enemy ship, long black pods slamming into the ground, opening like claws. From one of them stepped a figure she recognized instantly, tall, wrapped in armor of bone and metal. The warlord's mark burned red on his chest. Her chest tightened. It was the same mark she had seen on the collectors who took their last food. The same mark on the trader's contract. Elias grabbed a weapon from a hidden compartment in the wall. A short, heavy rifle that hissed with energy. They're here for you, he said, not bothering to soften the truth. And they won't stop unless we stop them first. The first blast hit the side of the house, shattering part of the wall. Leora stumbled back as smoke filled the room. Through the gap, she saw armored warriors moving toward them in perfect lines. Elias tossed her a small metal object. It was round with a single button. If they take me, press this, he said. What will it do? She asked. He only shook his head. You'll know. The front door burst open. Two of the warlord's warriors stepped inside, weapons raised. Without hesitation, Elias fired. The sound was sharp, the flash blinding. The first warrior fell. The second ducked behind the doorframe. Leora's heart pounded. She had no training, no weapon. But she knew this. If they took her alive, she would never be free again. From somewhere outside came that same scratching sound she had heard in the ship and in the storage room. Only now it was louder, faster, moving toward the battle. She didn't know if it was friend or foe, but she knew the fight was only just beginning. Asterisk smoke still clung to the air. The walls of the house were cracked, the sound of battle outside rising and falling like a storm. Elias pulled Leora through the back hall, his steps quick but steady. Every few seconds, he looked over his shoulder. Not at her, but at the shadows behind them. They reached a narrow metal door. Elias pushed a code into the panel, and it slid open to reveal a small, dark chamber. In the middle sat a single-seat craft, no bigger than a bed. Its surface shimmered faintly, like it was barely real. This will take you to safety, he said. Once you're inside, it will vanish from sensors. No one will find you. She stared at it. Safety, freedom. It was the thing she thought she wanted most. But when she looked back at the hall, she could still hear the warlord soldiers tearing through the rooms. And somewhere beyond that, the faint sound, scratching, closer now, faster. Elias stepped toward her. I can hold them off, he said. You don't owe me anything. Go. Before she could answer, the sound came again, not from the hall, but from above. Something dropped through the ceiling with a hiss, landing between them and the door. It wasn't one of the warlord's soldiers. It wasn't human either. Its body was long and low, skin dark like liquid metal. Its eyes were pale and bright, fixed on Leora. It tilted its head, and the scratching began again, the same steady rhythm she had heard on the ship, in the house. In her dreams, Elias lifted his weapon, but the creature didn't move toward him. It moved toward her, slow, deliberate steps then. In a voice so soft it was almost a thought, she heard it. You are not his. You are ours. Her breath caught. Ours. Not the warlords. Not the humans. The walls shook as another blast hit the house. Elias fired at the creature, but the shot passed through it like smoke. It didn't even flinch. It only looked at Leora, waiting. Behind her, the craft door was still open, humming softly. If she stepped inside, she could be gone in seconds. If she stayed, she would face this thing, and whatever truth it carried. Elias's voice broke through the noise. Leora, choose now. She turned from the ship to the creature. Her heart beat like a drum, and she stepped forward toward the thing that had been following her since the marketplace. Leora's foot touched the floor between her and the creature. Instantly, the world around her changed. The cracked walls, the smoke, even the sound of gunfire faded into a strange, muffled hum. She stood in a gray, endless space, the creature. Before her, Elias frozen behind her like a statue. The creature's pale eyes glowed brighter. "You are not property," it said. "You are the last key." Liara's throat tightened. "Key for what?" she asked. The creature stepped closer, and in its shifting skin she saw flashes, burning cities, alien fleets, humans fighting in the dark. "The warlord hunts you because you can end him," it whispered. "Your blood carries the code that can shut his armies down." The space around her shattered like glass. The noise of the battle rushed back in. The creature was still there, but now it stood between her and the warlord's soldiers who had forced their way into the room. One of them barked orders in a harsh alien tongue. The creature lunged, moving like a shadow turned to steel. Elias grabbed her arm, pulling her toward cover. "What did it tell you?" He shouted over the sound of the fight. "That I can end this," she said, breathless. He didn't question her. Instead, he pressed a small data drive into her hand. "This will connect to your genetic code. If what it said is true, we can use it." The fight spilled into the yard, above them. The warlord's massive ship hovered, its shadow covering the house. The creature tore through the last of the ground soldiers, then turned its gaze upward. It looked at her one last time. "Call them," it said, and leapt toward the ship like it was climbing air itself. Elias pulled her toward a console hidden in the corner of the yard. The drive clicked into place, the screen flashing red. A prompt appeared. "Authority code Arikuru." She pressed her palm to the scanner. The screen turned white. A signal shot upward. Into the sky, the warlord's ship shuddered, lights across its surface blinking, weapons powering down. Then, like a giant beast losing its strength, it tilted and fell away toward the horizon. The sudden silence felt heavier than the battle. Elias looked at her, his face unreadable. "You just saved this planet," he said. She shook her head. "No. We just saved each other." From far above, the creature's pale eyes glinted one last time before it vanished into the clouds. Leora didn't know if it was gone for good or only waiting, but she knew her life was hers now. She looked out at the broken yard, the rising sun turning the sky gold. She had been sold to save her family, but somewhere in this strange human world, she had found something unexpected. Not a master, not a captor, but a partner, and perhaps a new home.